Welcome. In this hopefully 2 to 3 minute video, we're going to take a look at how we can use custom jQuery or just vanilla JavaScript within RackForms. So the basic setup for this is I had a question posed to me, which is I have a set of checkbox options, and I want to count how many of those options were checked. So the basic technique that I use when I want to solve a problem like this is I essentially just shortcut, and unless I know the direct answer or code that I want to use, I'm just going to perform a search on the internet for it. And in this case then, I said jQuery count checkboxes. That then took me to this really helpful Stack Overflow page where it gave me essentially this code right here, and the one I kind of narrowed in on was this right here. So number of checkboxes is equal to the selector looking at the .length property. So how does this actually work when I want to apply this to RackForms? Well, I knew that this was basically the code that I wanted, so I basically took it, copied it, and then in my form, I used, when I selected the field, the conditional processing logic block. So the first thing I did is I selected an event trigger, in this case on click, and then I pasted my code into the custom conditional field statement. What this basically means is every time somebody clicks on one of these checkbox items, this code is going to be run. And in this particular case, just for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to alert the number of boxes that were checked. Now there's two really important things here in order to understand how this code works. The first I should mention is that this code is using jQuery, and so if you're ever using an external library, we do need to go into the page JavaScript section, so click to skip down there now, and include that core JavaScript library. So here you can see I've included jQuery production minified. The next thing then is to actually modify the code if needed so it matches my purposes. Now in this particular case, I could see just from reading this right here that this is going to try to count all the checkboxes on the page. Now this may actually be okay if you only have one set of checkboxes on the page, but probably a more robust way of writing something like this is to actually look at the specific element that we want, so we only count those checkboxes. And so the way I handled that was this. I selected the element, and I used this bit of code right here. So I took the original version and I added this to it. So $FB_field-colors. Where the heck does this actually come from? Well, this actually comes from the fact that when I run this form right here, if we actually look at the HTML structure of our elements, we can see that when I select an individual form item right here, I have an ID and it's called colors0, and if I select the next one, it's going to be colors1 and so on. In order to actually count checkboxes, I need to grab the overall wrapper for all these checkbox items and use that in my query. And we can see right here that when I actually close that little disclosure triangle, we actually have two elements in this form, and each one of them is prefixed with this FB_FLD-. Now this just stands for the old name version of RackForms, formBoss_field-. So this part is always the same. The part that we care about is the name of the field. So you can see right here then that the name of this form field is colors. So therefore it's always going to be FB_FLD- and then the name of the field. So in this case, colors. I can then use this to my advantage right here to, in other words, say that the wrapper for this is FB_field-colors. And then when I write my query, I'm going to say, right, when you're counting the number of checkboxes, I want you to go ahead and look at the ID of a field called FB_field-colors, and then within that, look at any input checkboxes that are checked. When I do that, then the end result is I get something like this. So every time I add one of these checkboxes, I'm getting an additional item counted. So that's just a quick tour of the way that I would take custom JavaScript and apply it to a form in RackForms. As way of a brief summary of this, again, we'll just kind of go through the whole thing. So the first thing I did was I selected my page, and because I'm using jQuery, I made sure that I included the minified jQuery library. I then did a search on the internet and found a little snippet of code right here that basically does what I want. I then selected the field, and in the conditional code block, I made sure I selected an appropriate trigger, in this case on click, because this is a checkbox. And then I put my code into the custom conditional field statement block. Because I only wanted to count particular checkboxes from this particular field, I made sure I added to my selector statement this qualifier to basically say only count the checkboxes that are in this particular field right here. And with that, then, we're essentially done. Of course, if you have any questions about this or anything else you see in RackForms, please let us know at info@rackforms.com.